May your happiness last just one day, Jada Okoye declared, her voice steady yet piercing, as she stepped from a sleek helicopter, arm in arm with millionaire Ethan Caldwell, before the stunned gazes of her ex-husband Gregory and his bride Abigail. The grand wedding hall fell silent, eyes wide with shock at her dramatic arrival, a moment that would unravel secrets and redefine legacies. Welcome, dear listeners, to A Journey Beyond the Ashes, a tale of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Where are you tuning in from? Share your location and your guesses about how this story unfolds in the comments below. Will Jada find closure, or will truths ignite chaos? Subscribe now to catch our latest videos and join our community as we explore stories of strength and triumph. What lies behind Jada's bold words, and how will her presence shift the tide? Stay tuned to uncover the truth. The city hummed beyond the thin walls of Jada Okoye's apartment, a restless pulse that stirred her from sleep before dawn. She lay still, her breath shallow, listening to the distant wail of sirens and the soft clatter of early delivery trucks. The bed beside her was cold, the sheets undisturbed where her husband, Gregory Hamilton, should have been. Jada's fingers traced the empty space, her heart sinking with a familiar ache. Gregory had slipped away again, leaving only the ghost of his presence. She didn't call out for him anymore. The questions she once asked had long since dried up, unanswered. With a sigh, she rose, her braided hair falling loosely over her shoulders as she padded to the kitchen. The cracked linoleum floor chilled her bare feet, a sharp reminder of their modest life. She brewed instant coffee, its bitter steam curling upward, and stared out the window at a faded billboard across the street. "Dream big," it proclaimed in peeling letters, a cruel irony that mocked the dreams she and Gregory once shared. Jada, a black woman of Nigerian descent, had always believed in those dreams. She and Gregory, a white man with eyes full of ambition, had married young, their love a defiant spark against a world that often judged them. They'd laughed through lean days, dreaming of a future where their small apartment would be a memory, replaced by a home filled with warmth and possibility. But lately those dreams had frayed, worn thin by Gregory's growing restlessness. He'd leave before sunrise, muttering about work or vague business deals, his voice clipped, his patience thinner each day. Jada tied her hair back, slipped into her worn sneakers, and headed to the bakery where she worked long shifts, her hands kneading dough while her mind wrestled with worry. She didn't ask where he went anymore. The silence between them was answer enough. That evening, Gregory burst through the door, his face shadowed with frustration. Jada was setting the table, the scent of rice and a thin, watery stew filling the air. It was all she could afford until payday, a fact that weighed heavily on her. Gregory tossed his jacket onto the sagging couch, his eyes narrowing at the meal. "Rice again?" he snapped, not bothering to mask his disdain. Jada forced a smile, her hands steady as she placed a chipped plate before him. "It's what we have for now, Gregory. I get paid Friday. Maybe then we can—" He cut her off, his voice sharp as a blade. "Friday? That's days away, Jada. Why do we have to live like this?" The words stung, each one a barb that hooked into her heart. She sat across from him, her voice soft but firm. "We're trying, Gregory. Things will get better. You said your friend Mark was starting that new job. Maybe he can help." Gregory's fist slammed onto the table, rattling the plates. The sound echoed in the small room, a thunderclap of his discontent. "Mark? Mark doesn't care about us. Nobody does. I'm tired, Jada. Tired of being broke. Tired of seeing you in the same two dresses. Tired of scraping by." His words hung heavy, each one chiseling away at the foundation of their shared life. Jada's chest tightened, but she held his gaze, searching for the man she'd married, the one who'd once promised her the world. "I know it's hard," she said, her voice trembling but resolute, "but we have each other. We always said that's what matters." Gregory looked away, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the peeling wallpaper. "I don't want this life anymore," he said, his voice low, final. The silence that followed was sharper than any argument, a blade that cut through the air and left Jada breathless. She reached across the table, her hand trembling, desperate to bridge the growing chasm between them. "Gregory, please," she whispered. "We've made it this far. Remember when we had nothing but hope? We can start again. I can take on more shifts, find another job." He jerked his hand back, his eyes cold. "Don't you get it, Jada? I don't want to start over. I want out of this mess. I want to breathe, to stop worrying about every bill, to live for once." His words landed like blows, each one shattering a piece of the life they'd built together. Jada blinked back tears, her voice barely a whisper. "So, what do you want?" Gregory stared at the ceiling, his shoulders slumped. "I want more than this, Jada. You don't get it. You never have." Dinner passed in a suffocating quiet, the clink of spoons against plates the only sound. Gregory retreated to the couch, his back to her, and soon his breathing softened into sleep. Jada sat by the window, the city lights blurring through her unshed tears. Below, young couples strolled hand in hand, their laughter a stark contrast to the heaviness in her chest. She wondered where it had all gone wrong, when love had stopped being enough. The billboard's promise mocked her, its faded letters a reminder of dreams that no longer felt hers. Yet even in her pain, a spark of resolve flickered. Tomorrow she'd speak to her boss, ask for more hours, anything to keep Gregory from slipping further away. She clung to the hope that she could fix this, that she could make him see her again, not as a burden, but as the partner she'd always been. As she lay in bed that night, the empty space beside her felt like a wound. The city's hum was a distant lullaby, but sleep eluded her. Jada stared into the darkness, her mind racing with memories of better days. Gregory's laughter, their shared plans, the way he'd once looked at her like she was his world. Now that world was crumbling, and she didn't know how to hold it together. She closed her eyes, willing herself to believe that tomorrow might bring a change, that Gregory might remember the love that had once bound them. But deep down, a quiet fear whispered that the man she loved was already gone, chasing a dream she could no longer reach. The night stretched on, heavy with unspoken promises and the weight of a marriage on the brink. The morning light crept through the apartment's thin curtains, casting pale streaks across the linoleum floor, but it brought no warmth to Jada Okoye's world. She woke with a start, her hand instinctively reaching for Gregory Hamilton's side of the bed, only to find it cold and untouched, as it had been the night before. The silence in the apartment was deafening, a void where his presence should have been. Jada sat up, her heart pounding with a vague dread she couldn't name. She called out softly, "Gregory?" But the word echoed unanswered. Her bare feet met the chilly floor as she moved through the small space, her eyes scanning for any sign of him. The couch where he'd slept after their tense dinner was empty, the blanket folded with unnatural precision. Her gaze fell to the kitchen table, and there, gleaming under the weak light, was Gregory's wedding ring, abandoned beside a single sheet of paper. Jada's breath caught as she approached, her fingers trembling as she lifted the note. Gregory's handwriting, once so familiar, now felt like a stranger's scrawl. "Jada, I'm sorry. I need to move on. Don't contact me." The words were stark, final, each one a shard that pierced her chest. She sank into a chair, the paper crumpling in her grip, her eyes fixed on the ring, a simple band that had once symbolized their shared dreams. Now it was a relic of betrayal, cold and lifeless. She turned it over in her hand, its weight heavier than ever, and a sob broke free, raw and unbidden. Gregory was gone, not just from the apartment, but from her life, leaving nothing but this cruel farewell. The apartment felt hollow, its walls closing in as Jada tried to process the finality of his departure. She stumbled to the closet, half expecting to find his clothes, his scent, some trace of the man she'd loved. But the shelves were bare, his jackets and shirts vanished, as if he'd erased himself from their shared existence. The emptiness was suffocating, a physical ache that mirrored the one in her heart. She clutched the note, rereading it, searching for a hint of explanation, a reason why love had crumbled so swiftly. But there was nothing, just cold, curt words that offered no closure, no mercy. Jada pressed her hands to her face, tears slipping through her fingers, and for a moment she let herself break. the weight of his abandonment crushing her spirit. Yet even in her grief, Jada's resilience flickered, a stubborn ember refusing to die. She rose, wiping her eyes, and forced herself to move. The bakery awaited, its demands a lifeline to anchor her. She dressed mechanically, her movements slow but deliberate, pulling on her worn apron and tying her braided hair with a scarf. The mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized, eyes red, face drawn, but jaw set with determination. She couldn't stay here, drowning in the silence of Gregory's absence. Work was her refuge, the one place where she could still feel useful, needed. As she stepped into the bustling city, the noise of honking cars and chattering pedestrians enveloped her, a stark contrast to the stillness she'd left behind. At the bakery, the familiar scent of fresh bread and sugar grounded her, if only slightly. Jada threw herself into her tasks, kneading dough with a fervor that bordered on desperation, her hands moving with practiced precision. Customers came and went, their smiles and small talk a blur. She packed loaves into paper bags, swept crumbs from the counter, and forced smiles that didn't reach her eyes. Her co-worker Clara noticed the strain, her brow furrowing as she watched Jada work. "You okay, Jada?" Clara asked during a quiet moment, her voice soft with concern. Jada shook her head, unable to speak the truth. "Just tired," she lied, turning away to wipe down a display case. Clara didn't press, but her knowing glance lingered, a silent offer of support. The day dragged on, each hour a battle to keep her emotions at bay. Jada's phone remained silent, no messages, no calls. Not that she expected any. Gregory's note had been clear. He wanted no contact, no trace of their past. Yet she couldn't help checking, her heart lurching each time the screen stayed blank. During her break, she sat in the back room, staring at the ring she'd slipped into her pocket, its presence a constant reminder of her loss. She thought of calling her family, her mother's warm voice a distant comfort, but shame held her back. How could she admit that her marriage had collapsed, that she hadn't been enough to keep Gregory? Instead, she let their calls go to voicemail, her excuses thin but unchallenged. That evening, as the bakery closed, Clara pulled Jada aside, her hands firm on Jada's shoulders. "You look like you're carrying the world, girl," Clara said, her eyes searching. "Talk to me." Jada's resolve cracked, and the words spilled out in a whisper. "He's gone, Clara. Gregory left. Just a note and his ring. He's done with me." Clara's face hardened, anger flashing in her eyes. "He's a damn fool, Jada. You gave him everything. 2 jobs, all your heart, and he throws it away. You're worth more than that." Jada managed a weak nod, but the ache in her chest didn't ease. Clara pulled her into a fierce hug, her warmth a small anchor in the storm. "You're stronger than this," Clara murmured. "Don't let him make you forget that." Back at the apartment, the silence was louder than ever. Jada sat at the kitchen table, the note and ring before her, their presence a wound that refused to close. She traced the words with her finger, as if they might reveal something new, but they remained unyielding. The city lights glittered outside, indifferent to her pain, and Jada felt like a ghost in her own life. She thought of the dreams she and Gregory had shared, the promises whispered in happier times. Had they been lies, or had he simply stopped believing in them? She didn't know, and the not knowing was its kind of torment. She tucked the ring into a drawer, unable to bear its weight any longer, and resolved to keep moving forward, one step at a time. As she lay in bed that night, the apartment's emptiness pressed against her, a tangible force. Jada stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying Gregory's final words, his cold dismissal. Yet beneath the pain, a quiet strength stirred. She was still here, still standing, even if her world had shattered. The bakery, Clara, the rhythm of her work, they were hers, pieces of a life she could still claim. Sleep came slowly, fitfully, but when it did, it brought a fragile hope that tomorrow might be less heavy, that she might find a way to carry on without him. For now, Jada Okoye was broken, but not defeated, a woman determined to rise from the ashes of a love lost. The bakery's warmth enveloped Jada Okoye as she pushed through another shift, her hands dusted with flour, her movements a practiced dance amidst the chaos of clinking trays and chattering customers. The scent of fresh bread and caramelized sugar filled the air, a fleeting comfort against the hollow ache that lingered in her chest. She worked with a quiet intensity, kneading dough, wiping counters, and offering smiles that masked the turmoil within. Gregory's absence was a wound still raw, his note and abandoned ring tucked away in a drawer but never far from her thoughts. Yet life demanded she move forward, and the bakery was her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in the rhythm of work. The city outside buzzed with its relentless energy, indifferent to her loss, and Jada clung to the routine, each task a small act of defiance against despair. One evening, as the bakery's lights glowed against the dusk, a man entered, his presence subtly commanding. Ethan Caldwell, tall and poised with eyes that held a quiet kindness, ordered a loaf of rye and lingered at the counter. His voice was warm, his questions about the bakery's recipes genuine, and Jada found herself responding with more than her usual polite replies. He returned the next day, then the next, his visits becoming a bright spot in her grueling routine. Ethan was a millionaire philanthropist, known for supporting local businesses, but his interest in Jada felt personal, not transactional. Over coffee shared during a rare lull, he asked about her life, her dreams, and listened with an intensity that made her feel seen. "You've got a spark," he said, his smile gentle. "This place thrives because of you." Jada blushed, unaccustomed to such praise, and for the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope stirred within her. Their conversations grew longer, stretching beyond the bakery's walls. Ethan invited Jada for coffee at a quiet cafe, where they talked about everything from her Nigerian heritage to his travels. He spoke of building communities, not just wealth, and his sincerity chipped away at the walls Jada had built around her heart. She shared fragments of her story, her hard work, her sacrifices for a marriage that had crumbled. And Ethan listened without judgment, his presence a balm to her wounds. Their connection deepened, not with the fiery passion of her youth with Gregory, but with a steady warmth that felt like coming home. Ethan saw her strength, not her struggles, and in his eyes, Jada glimpsed a version of herself she'd nearly forgotten. Resilient, capable, worthy. One afternoon, as Jada swept the bakery's floor, a delivery arrived. An envelope, its crisp edges and elegant script jarring against the flour-dusted counter. Her breath caught as she recognized Gregory's handwriting, a ghost from a life she was trying to leave behind. She opened it with trembling hands, revealing a wedding invitation, its gold lettering announcing the union of Gregory Hamilton and Abigail Whitmore, a woman from a wealthy real estate family. The words "joyful occasion" burned into her, a cruel contrast to the pain of his departure. The event was imminent, a mere whisper of time since he'd walked out, leaving her with nothing but a note. Jada's heart pounded, anger and hurt warring within her. Why would he invite her? To gloat? To wound her further? She clutched the invitation, her vision blurring with unshed tears, the bakery's hum fading to a distant roar. Ethan arrived moments later, his smile faltering as he saw her distress. "Jada, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with concern. She handed him the invitation, her hands shaking. "He's getting married, and he wants me there." Ethan read the card, his jaw tightening, but his touch was gentle as he took her hand. "You don't have to go," he said, his eyes searching hers. "You owe him nothing." Jada shook her head, a resolve hardening within her. "I need to, Ethan. I need to see it for myself, to understand why he threw us away." Her voice was firm, though it trembled with emotion. Ethan nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Then we'll go together. You won't face this alone." That night, Jada sat by her window, the city lights a kaleidoscope of possibilities and pain. The invitation lay on her bedside table, its gold script catching the lamplight, a taunting reminder of Gregory's betrayal. But Ethan's words echoed in her mind, a lifeline pulling her from the depths. She thought of his quiet strength, his belief in her, so different from Gregory's restless discontent. Jada's fingers traced the edge of the invitation, her heart a storm of fear and determination. She didn't know what awaited her at the wedding, but she knew she wouldn't crumble. With Ethan by her side, she felt a spark of courage, a promise that she could face the truth, whatever it might be. The city hummed below, and for the first time, Jada felt not just its weight, but its potential, a world where she could rise again. The helicopter's blades sliced through the air, a rhythmic roar that drowned out the city's hum as Jada Okoye gripped Ethan Caldwell's hand. Below the wedding venue loomed a sprawling estate of white columns and manicured lawns, its opulence a world apart from the cramped apartment Jada once shared with Gregory Hamilton. Her emerald gown shimmered in the fading light, its fabric hugging her frame with an elegance she hadn't felt in years. Ethan, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, offered a reassuring smile, his presence a steady anchor against the storm brewing in her chest. "You're ready," he murmured, his voice cutting through the engine's drone. Jada nodded, her jaw set, though her heart raced with a mix of dread and defiance. She was here to face Gregory, to confront the man who'd discarded their love for a shinier future. As the helicopter descended, the crowd below turned, their faces a blur of curiosity and shock. The aircraft touched down on the lawn, kicking up gusts that rippled through the guests' finery. Ethan stepped out first, extending a hand to Jada, who emerged with a grace that belied her inner turmoil. The crowd parted, whispers rising like a tide. "Is that her? The ex-wife? Who's that with her? A helicopter?" Jada's heels sank slightly into the grass, but she held her head high, her dark eyes scanning the sea of faces. At the altar, Gregory froze, his smile faltering as he locked eyes with her. Beside him, Abigail Whitmore, radiant in a sparkling white gown, clutched her bouquet tighter, her expression shifting from confusion to unease. The air crackled with tension, the weight of Jada's arrival a silent thunderclap that disrupted the meticulously planned celebration. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Jada's back, a subtle gesture of support as they approached the grand hall. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting prisms across walls adorned with roses and gold ribbons. The opulence was staggering, a stark contrast to the cracked linoleum and watery stews of Jada's past life. Guests murmured, their gazes darting between her and the bridal party. Some recognized her, their whispers laced with pity or disdain. Why would she come? Desperate for attention. Jada ignored them, her focus narrowing to Gregory, who stood rigid, his eyes flickering with something, guilt perhaps, or fear. Abigail's father, Charles Whitmore, watched from the front, his expression unreadable but sharp, as if sensing an undercurrent he couldn't yet name. A sharply dressed usher approached, his brow arched in barely concealed judgment. "Invitation, please," he said, his tone clipped. Jada handed him the card, its gold script a bitter reminder of Gregory's audacity. He glanced at it, then at her, his lips thinning. "This way," he said, leading them to seats near the back, far from the family's prominence. Ethan squeezed Jada's arm, his voice low. "You're not here for them. You're here for you." She nodded, drawing strength from his words as they settled into their chairs. The ceremony began, the organ's notes swelling as Abigail glided down the aisle, her father beaming beside her. Gregory stood at the altar, his posture stiff but proud, his eyes avoiding Jada's. The guests rose, snapping photos, their murmurs praising the couple's bright future. Jada watched, her heart a storm of anger and hurt, searching for the man she'd once loved in the stranger before her. The ceremony unfolded with practiced elegance, vows exchanged, rings presented, applause echoing through the hall. Jada sat still, her hands clasped tightly, Ethan's presence a quiet shield against the weight of the moment. As the couple recessed, the crowd surged toward the reception, a lavish affair of champagne flutes and silver trays. Jada and Ethan followed, their entrance drawing fresh whispers. She felt the eyes on her, the speculation thick in the air, but she refused to falter. At their assigned table, far from the head, she picked at her food, her appetite lost to the churn of emotions. Ethan leaned close, his voice a soft counterpoint to the room's buzz. "He's trying to rewrite history," he said, nodding toward Gregory, who laughed with guests, his charm a polished mask. "But you know the truth." The reception hummed with music and chatter, but Jada's focus remained on Gregory. He took the microphone, his voice confident, almost cocky, as he addressed the crowd. "When I met Abigail, I was at a crossroads," he began, his eyes skimming the room but avoiding Jada. I was struggling, trying to make something of myself, but Abigail saw something in me. She believed in me when others saw only failure. The words were a knife, each one twisting in Jada's chest, an implicit dismissal of the years she'd poured into supporting him. The guests clapped. Abigail beamed, but Jada's hands tightened in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. Ethan's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "He's wrong," he whispered. "You held him up. Don't let him make you doubt that." As Gregory stepped down, the crowd's applause faded, and Jada felt a shift, a quiet resolve settling within her. She hadn't come to disrupt or beg. She was here to witness, to reclaim the narrative he'd tried to erase. The hall's grandeur, the guests' scrutiny, even Gregory's calculated speech couldn't diminish her. With Ethan beside her, Jada felt a spark of power, a certainty that she was more than the ex-wife left behind. The night was far from over, and though she couldn't yet see what lay ahead, she knew her presence had already changed the story. The chandeliers glowed above, the music swelled, but Jada Okoye stood at the edge of it all, unbroken, her heart beating with a fierce, unyielding strength. The grand hall pulsed with the clink of champagne flutes and the murmur of guests, but a restless undercurrent stirred beneath the reception's polished surface. Jada Okoye sat at her table, her emerald gown a vivid contrast to the pale linens, her hands clasped tightly to still their trembling. Ethan Caldwell's steady presence beside her was a lifeline, his quiet strength anchoring her as the weight of Gregory Hamilton's speech lingered. His words, praising Abigail Whitmore while dismissing Jada's years of sacrifice, had cut deep, each syllable a calculated erasure of their shared past. The crowd's applause had faded, but the sting remained, sharp and unyielding. Jada's eyes followed Gregory as he moved through the room, his charm a mask that fooled everyone but her. She knew the man beneath, the one who'd abandoned their love for a shinier promise. Yet as the music swelled, a new tension gripped the hall, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Charles Whitmore, Abigail's father, rose from his seat at the head table, his commanding presence silencing the chatter. He took the microphone, his face etched with a gravitas that made even the waiters pause. Jada's heart quickened, sensing a shift in the air. Ethan's hand brushed hers under the table, a silent reassurance as Charles's voice boomed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue this celebration, I must address a matter of integrity," he began, his tone heavy with purpose. The guests leaned forward, their curiosity piqued, as Gregory's smile faltered, his eyes darting nervously to Abigail. Jada's breath caught, her instincts whispering that the truth she'd come to face was about to break free. Charles's gaze swept the room, steady and unyielding, before settling on Gregory. "In our family, we value honesty above all else," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "I believed my daughter had chosen a man of character, but I've learned something troubling." The hall fell silent, the clink of glasses stilled, and every eye fixed on Charles. Gregory Hamilton was married before. To Jada Okoye, gasps rippled through the crowd, heads turning toward Jada, who sat erect, her expression composed but her heart pounding. He left her, blaming her for his struggles, when in truth, she was the one holding him together, working tirelessly to support them both. The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation, as the guests' whispers grew into a low roar. Jada felt the weight of their stares, a mix of shock, pity, and curiosity, but she held her ground, her chin lifted. Gregory's face drained of color, his polished facade crumbling. He stepped forward, his voice unsteady. "Mr. Whitmore, it wasn't like that," he stammered, his eyes flickering to Abigail, who stood frozen, her bouquet trembling in her hands. "Jada and we weren't right for each other. I was trying to find my way." Abigail turned to him, her eyes wide with betrayal. "Is this true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible but sharp with hurt. Gregory faltered, his hands raised as if to deflect the truth. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted a better life." His words sounded hollow, a weak defense against the weight of Charles's revelation. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a tide of judgment washing over him. Charles raised a hand, silencing Gregory. "Enough," he said, his voice ablade. "A man who conceals his past and casts blame On a loyal partner is not one I trust, not for my daughter, not for my family. The room seemed to hold its breath, the tension electric, as Abigail's eyes filled with tears. She turned to Jada, her expression a mix of shock and shame. I didn't know, she said, her voice breaking as she crossed the room to Jada's table. He told me you held him back, that you were the reason he struggled. I'm so sorry. Jada's throat tightened, but she met Abigail's gaze, her own eyes steady. He told me the same, she said softly, her words carrying a quiet power. But I gave everything to keep us afloat. I believed in him, even when he stopped believing in himself. The guests watched, transfixed, as the truth unfolded like a drama they hadn't anticipated. Jada's composure, her dignity in the face of Gregory's deceit, shifted the room's perception. Whispers of pity turned to murmurs of respect, the ex-wife no longer a footnote, but a figure of strength. Ethan's hand tightened around hers, his pride in her palpable. Gregory stood alone, his shoulders slumped, his charm useless against the weight of his exposed lies. Abigail's tears spilled over, her voice rising as she faced him. How could you lie to me, to my family, to everyone? Gregory opened his mouth, but no words came. His confidence was shattered under the scrutiny of the crowd and the woman he'd hoped to impress. Charles turned to Jada, his expression softening with a rare warmth. Ms. Okoye, you have my deepest apologies, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. You deserved better than this deception, and your presence here tonight speaks to your courage. Jada's lips trembled, but she nodded, her voice caught in her throat. The acknowledgement was unexpected, a balm to wounds she'd carried in silence. Abigail hesitated, then reached out, her hand brushing Jada's arm. I believed him, she said, her voice raw. I thought I knew who he was. I was wrong. Jada's eyes softened, not with forgiveness, but with understanding. Sometimes the truth takes time to show itself, she said, her words a quiet anchor in the storm. The hall remained hushed. The celebration paused as the weight of Charles's words settled over the guests. Gregory stood frozen, his eyes darting between Abigail, Charles, and Jada, as if searching for a way to reclaim his narrative. But the truth was out, stark and unyielding, and it had shifted the room's center. Jada felt Ethan's steady gaze, his silent support, a reminder that she wasn't alone. She had come to face Gregory, to understand his betrayal, but now she stood at the heart of a revelation that exposed him to all. The chandeliers above cast their glittering light, but the true brilliance was Jada's resilience, a quiet fire that burned brighter than the lies that had tried to dim her. The night was far from over, but in this moment, Jada Okoye was no longer the woman left behind. She was the one who had endured, and the truth was her victory. The grand hall, once alive with celebration, now pulsed with a raw, electric tension. The chandeliers cast their fractured light across the stunned faces of the guests, but all eyes were fixed on the unfolding drama at its center. Jada Okoye stood, her emerald gown a beacon of resolve, her heart pounding with a courage she hadn't known she possessed. Beside her, Ethan Caldwell's steady presence was a quiet fortress, his hand resting lightly on hers, grounding her in the storm. Across the room, Gregory Hamilton stood alone, his polished charm shattered by Charles Whitmore's devastating revelation. Abigail Whitmore, her white gown now a stark contrast to her tear-streaked face, stared at Gregory, her trust in him unraveling. The air was thick with anticipation, every whisper and rustle silenced as the weight of truth settled over the crowd. Jada took a step forward, her gaze locking onto Gregory's. His eyes, once so familiar, now flickered with desperation, stripped of the arrogance that had carried him through his speech. She spoke, her voice clear and unwavering, slicing through the heavy silence. I was your partner, Gregory, not your burden, she said, each word deliberate, a blade honed by years of sacrifice. I worked 2 jobs, poured my heart into us, and believed in you when you doubted yourself. But you chose to run, to blame me for your failures. The guests leaned in, their murmurs hushed, captivated by her quiet power. Gregory's shoulders slumped, his mouth opening, but no defense came. Jada's words were a mirror, reflecting the man he tried to hide, a man who'd traded love for ambition, loyalty for opportunity. Abigail's voice broke the silence, trembling with betrayal. You used me, she said, stepping back from Gregory, her eyes blazing. You used my family, my father's trust to build your lies. And you used her. She gestured toward Jada, her voice cracking with fury. All for what? To pretend you're someone you're not? Gregory reached for her, his hands shaking. Abigail, I didn't mean. I just wanted a chance. A better life. His voice was small, a shadow of the confidence he'd wielded moments ago. Abigail shook her head, stepping further away, her tears falling freely. You had a chance with her, she said, nodding toward Jada, and you threw it away. Charles Whitmore's presence loomed, his stern gaze fixed on Gregory. You've shown your character, he said, his voice a low thunder. I built my life on trust, on integrity. I cannot have a man in my family or my business who runs from his past and betrays those who stood by him. He turned to the crowd, his authority unshakable. There will be no partnership, no marriage, until I see honesty and true character. The words landed like a verdict, final and unyielding. Gregory's face crumpled, his eyes darting to Abigail, then Jada, as if pleading for salvation. But the room offered none, its silence a judgment heavier than any words. Jada's heart raced, but her voice remained steady as she addressed Gregory again. I found someone who values me, she said, glancing at Ethan, whose eyes shone with pride. Ethan sees me for who I am, not what I can give him. I'm not the problem you made me out to be, Gregory. I was your strength, and you couldn't see it. Her words were not cruel but clear, a declaration of her worth, reclaimed in the face of his betrayal. Ethan's hand tightened around hers, a silent vow of support. The guests watched, their earlier whispers of pity now replaced by murmurs of admiration. Jada's dignity reshaping the narrative they'd assumed. Abigail approached Jada, her steps hesitant, her eyes red but earnest. I believed every word he said, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. He told me you held him back, that you were the reason he couldn't succeed. I'm so sorry, Jada. I wish I'd known the truth. Jada met her gaze, her own eyes softening with a compassion she hadn't expected to feel. None of this is your fault, she said gently. He spun the same story for me, made me doubt myself. But the truth always finds a way out. Abigail nodded, her lips trembling as she clasped Jada's hand, a fleeting connection born of shared disillusionment. Charles stepped forward, addressing the room with a finality that silenced the last murmurs. This celebration is paused, he declared. We will resolve this matter privately, but let it be clear. Trust is the foundation of family, and it has been broken here. He turned to Jada, his expression one of respect. Miss Okoye, your strength tonight is a testament to your character. You have my regard. Jada nodded, her throat tight with emotion, the acknowledgement a spark of light in the darkness of her past. As the guests stirred, their voices rising in hushed speculation, Jada felt the weight of the moment shift. She had come to face Gregory, to understand his betrayal, but she'd done more. She'd claimed her truth, her voice resounding in a room that had tried to diminish her. Ethan leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. You were incredible, he whispered, his pride a quiet fire. Jada managed a small smile, her heart steadying. The hall's grandeur, once intimidating, now felt like a stage where she'd reclaimed her power. Gregory stood alone, his head bowed, the man who'd sought to erase her now diminished by his own deceit. Jada's journey was far from over, but in this moment, she stood tall, her clarity a beacon in the chaos, her strength undeniable. The bakery's bell chimed softly, a familiar sound that grounded Jada Okoye as she wiped down the counter, the scent of warm bread and vanilla weaving through the air. The morning was quiet, the city's hum a distant murmur beyond the shop's windows, but Jada's heart carried a new rhythm, one of possibility, not pain. The wedding's chaos, where her ex-husband Gregory Hamilton's lies had unraveled, felt like a distant storm. Its thunder faded, but its impact was undeniable. Jada had stood tall in that glittering hall, her truth laid bare, and now she stood here, in her domain, ready to shape what came next. Her emerald gown was gone, replaced by her flour-dusted apron, but the strength she'd reclaimed remained, a quiet fire burning within her. The world outside her bakery was shifting, and she was no longer the woman left behind. She was the architect of her future. As Jada arranged a tray of pastries, the door swung open, admitting Charles Whitmore and his daughter Abigail. The sight of them stilled the shop, customers pausing mid-conversation, their curiosity palpable. Charles, imposing in his tailored suit, carried an air of purpose, while Abigail's eyes, still touched with the weight of recent revelations, held a tentative warmth. Jada set down her rag, her pulse quickening, but her smile was steady. "Mr. Whitmore, Abigail," she greeted, her voice calm but curious. "I wasn't expecting you." Charles stepped forward, his expression serious yet kind. "Ms. Okoye, I hope we're not intruding. We came to speak with you about your future." The words hung in the air, heavy with promise, and Jada's breath caught, sensing a turning point she hadn't dared to imagine. Charles's voice was measured, each word chosen with care. "I've been in business a long time, Jada," he said, his gaze steady. "I know what it takes to build something from nothing. I've seen you here, working tirelessly, carrying yourself with dignity, despite everything. You have grit, the kind most people lack." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I'd like to invest in your bakery, help you expand, perhaps open a second shop. Not as charity, but as a partnership. I believe in what you can build." Jada's eyes widened, her mind racing. The bakery, her sanctuary, had always been a small dream, constrained by long hours and limited means. Now Charles was offering a chance to make it something more, something hers in a way it had never been before. Abigail stepped forward, her voice soft but earnest. "You didn't have to tell me the truth about Gregory," she said, her eyes meeting Jada's. "But you did, and it changed everything. You're the reason I saw him for who he is. I want to support you too." Jada's throat tightened, moved by the unexpected alliance. She glanced at the bakery's worn counter, the shelves she'd stocked with care, and saw not just a workplace, but a legacy waiting to be built. "Why me?" she asked, her voice steady but searching. Charles smiled, a rare warmth softening his features. "Because you never gave up, even when the world tried to break you. That's the kind of person I bet on." Jada hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the counter, the weight of the decision pressing against her. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about proving to herself what she was capable of. "I'll accept," she said finally, her voice firm, "but I want to earn it. I want to show myself and everyone else what I can do." Charles extended his hand, his grip strong and certain. "That's all I ask," he said. And as their hands met, Jada felt a surge of pride, a quiet certainty that she was stepping into a new chapter. Abigail's smile was genuine, a bridge between two women who'd been shaped by the same betrayal, but were now bound by respect. The bakery transformed in the days that followed, Charles's investment breathing new life into its modest walls. Jada hired extra staff, their laughter filling the shop as they worked, and upgraded the ovens, the scent of fresh pastries drawing crowds from across the city. The community rallied behind her, word spreading of the woman who'd turned pain into purpose. Customers lingered, sharing stories of their own, and Jada's bakery became more than a shop. It was a beacon of resilience, a place where people saw their own struggles reflected in her triumph. Her hands, once weary from endless shifts, now moved with purpose, shaping not just dough, but a future she'd never dared to dream. Ethan Caldwell remained her constant, his love a steady flame that warmed her through the changes. Their evenings together were filled with laughter and quiet moments, his belief in her a mirror to her growing confidence. One night, as they walked through the city, the lights glittering like stars, Ethan took her hand. "You're building something incredible," he said, his voice soft but fervent, "and I'm so proud to be by your side." Jada smiled, her heart full, knowing that with Ethan, she'd found a partner who saw her not as a means to an end, but as a woman whole and enough. Their bond deepened, a promise of a life built on trust, a stark contrast to the hollow vows of her past. Abigail, too, became a presence in Jada's life, stopping by the bakery to help with small tasks or share coffee over honest conversations. Their friendship was unexpected, forged in the crucible of Gregory's deceit, but it grew strong, rooted in mutual respect. One afternoon, as they arranged a display of cupcakes, Abigail laughed, her eyes bright. "I never thought we'd be here," she said, "but I'm glad we are." Jada nodded, her own smile genuine. "Me too," she said, and in that moment, the bakery felt like more than a business. It was a community, a testament to what women could build when they stood together. As Jada locked up the shop one evening, the city's pulse felt different, not oppressive, but alive with possibility. The billboard across the street, with its faded "Dream Big," no longer mocked her. It was a challenge she was meeting, one step at a time. She'd lost a marriage, but she'd gained something greater, a sense of self, a community that saw her worth and a path she could shape. The bakery's sign glowed softly behind her, a symbol of her resilience, and Jada Okoye walked into the night, her heart light with the knowledge that her future was hers to claim. The city's pulse thrummed softly as Jada Okoye stood at the edge of a small park, its familiar paths lined with memories of a life she'd left behind. The air was cool, the leaves rustling under a starlit sky, and the bench where she waited felt like a relic of her past with Gregory Hamilton. Her bakery, now a thriving hub, was miles away, its success a testament to her resilience. But today she was here, summoned by a message from Gregory, short, almost desperate, pleading for a meeting. Jada's heart was steady, no longer tethered to the pain he'd caused, but she'd agreed to come, driven by a need for closure, not reconciliation. Ethan Caldwell, her anchor in love, had supported her decision, his trust a quiet strength. She wore a simple dress, her braided hair catching the moonlight, her presence radiating a calm power that had grown from ashes. Gregory arrived, his steps hesitant, his once confident frame diminished. He looked older, hollow-eyed, the weight of his choices etched into his features. He sat beside her, the silence between them heavy with unspoken history. "Jada," he began, his voice trembling, "I don't know where to start. I ruined everything. Hurt you, Abigail. Everyone. I wanted so much and ended up with nothing." His words were raw, stripped of the bravado that had once defined him. Jada watched him, her gaze steady but not unkind. The man before her was a shadow of the one she'd loved, his ambition now a hollow echo. She felt no anger, only a calm pity, a recognition of the cost of his shortcuts. "I forgive you, Gregory," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the night stillness. "But forgiveness isn't forgetting, and it's not going back. I forgive you for my peace, not yours." Gregory's shoulders sagged, his eyes dropping to the ground. "I know it doesn't mean much now," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm sorry. I hope one day I can be the man you thought I could be." Jada nodded, her expression gentle but firm. "Learn to value people, Gregory, not just what they can offer. That's the only way you'll find what you're looking for." She stood ready to leave, her heart unburdened. "Take care," she said, and as she walked away, the park's shadows seemed to lift, the weight of her past falling away like leaves in the wind. Back at the bakery, Jada poured her energy into her work, her hands shaping dough with a purpose that felt like destiny. Charles Whitmore's investment had transformed the shop, its new ovens gleaming, its shelves brimming with pastries that drew crowds from across the city. She'd hired more staff, their laughter a daily symphony, and Clara, her loyal friend, had become the bakery's manager, her fierce support a cornerstone of Jada's new life. The community embraced her, customers sharing stories over coffee, their admiration turning the bakery into a symbol of resilience. A local paper featured Jada, its headline praising the woman who rose from betrayal, and each word felt like a brick in the legacy she was building. Ethan remained her rock, his love a steady flame that warmed her through the long days. Their relationship had deepened into a partnership rooted in trust, a stark contrast to the hollow promises of her past. One evening as they stood in the bakery's kitchen, the scent of vanilla lingering, Ethan took her hands, his eyes shining. "Marry me, Jada," he said, his voice fervent. "Let's build a life together, one that's real." Jada's heart swelled and she nodded, tears of joy in her eyes. Their wedding was quiet, intimate, surrounded by those who mattered: Clara, Abigail, and a small circle of loved ones. As they exchanged vows, Jada felt whole, her love for Ethan a foundation stronger than any she'd known. Abigail, too, had become a fixture in Jada's life, their friendship a bridge forged in shared truth. She visited often, helping with tasks or sharing laughter over coffee, her presence a reminder that healing could follow betrayal. One afternoon, as they arranged a display of cupcakes, Abigail grinned. "We're a long way from that wedding, aren't we?" Jada laughed, her voice light. "A million miles, and I wouldn't change it." Their bond, unlikely but strong, was a testament to the power of honesty, a thread woven into the tapestry of Jada's new life. As Jada locked the bakery one evening, the city's lights glittered like a promise. The billboard across the street, with its faded "Dream Big," now felt like a challenge she'd met and surpassed. Her bakery was more than a business. It was a beacon, a place where the community saw their strength reflected. Jada had lost a marriage but gained herself, her integrity, a light that outshone the pain of Gregory's betrayal. With Ethan by her side, their family growing, and Abigail's friendship a steady presence, Jada's life was not perfect but real, rooted in love and truth. She stepped into the night, her heart full, knowing her legacy was one of resilience, a story that would endure long after the city's hum faded. As Jada Okoye's journey in A Journey Beyond the Ashes comes to a close, we invite you to reflect on her story of resilience and redemption. What did her courage inspire in you? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know where you're tuning in from. Your voice matters to our community. We're deeply grateful for your time and engagement, and we hope this tale of strength has left a spark in your heart. Subscribe to our channel to join us for more stories that uplift and inspire, and stay tuned for our next chapter. Thank you for being part of this journey, and we look forward to meeting you again in our future videos.